Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today's video is the Acer Predator Triton 500 review. This is obviously a step up from the Triton 300. It's packing a couple unique features that sets itself apart from its little brother. And so, is it really worth the extra money? Well, let's watch to find out. Let's roll. So I've had this unit for the better part of a week now, and I have to say I was a little cautious. You know, coming from the 300, I didn't really feel like this was going to be much of an upgrade, but this unit actually surprised me. It's packing enough unique feature that actually not only sets it apart from the 300, it actually performs very well against other models in its same category. So a couple of the features on this unit. Of course, it's a all aluminum design. That's everything from the lid, the deck, and even the bottom underneath. The one thing about the bottom is that it does have fairly limited slots for airflow. This is the intake on the unit. And I felt like that was actually stifling the 300, and it actually does quite well here. It also features a 17.9 millimeter thickness, which is very impressive, and also features a 180-degree tilt on the screen, which is very nice. So this unit features a plethora of I/O. You'll want to check out my unboxing video and first impressions up above. That will go over every one of those components, but it's well-featured I/O. So the one thing that you'll notice on this unit that's different over many out there is that usually there's a combo headphone mic port. And this one has it broken out. So this is nice because it can give you some more options as it relates to a mic or headphone instead of maybe having a dongle that binds them together. Now that being said, I do prefer the single combo port just simply because you get one wire that comes out of the unit. So let's take a look under the hood and see what kind of specs we have on this unit. So when we look under the hood, you can see that the motherboard is actually flipped. And so that means the access to the memory as well as the storage is actually on the other side, which makes it a little bit more difficult to gain access to. A couple more screws to get through. The unique feature on the Predator 500 over the 300 is in fact that you get an extra fan for the GPU. Now, Acer claims that it has the Aero Blade 3D technology and Vortex Flow. However, when you look at the fans themselves, only one of them actually features that vortex flow, which may only be what's needed in this model. However, you would expect that all fans would have that same technology if it was that much more superior. But that being said, it does do a really good job of keeping it cool, and it does a far better job that you'll see a little bit later in the benchmarks of keeping those noise levels in check while at good peak gaming levels. So this unit features the Intel i7-10750H, 6 cores, 12 threads, 16 gigs of memory in dual channel. It also has a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, as well as the RTX 2070 Super. I was able to see around 90 watts. Sometimes, depending on if the CPU was at the low wattage side, it could go all the way up to 105, which is pretty impressive when you think that this is a very slim chassis at only just under 18 millimeters. Now, in terms of weight on this unit is 4 pounds, 10 ounces, and I can tell you it does feel quite sturdy. There's a little bit of flex in the chassis. The screen itself, though, does have a fair bit of flex in it. Nothing that I'd be worried about, but just a little bit less rigid than most screens that are out there. Now, the screen is a 1080p screen, 300 Hz G-Sync panel, which is very, very nice. Like this screen is gorgeous. So in terms of the keyboard itself, this is a per key RGB. The keyboard is fairly tactile as it relates to typing on it. I feel like the keys have decent travel. It's not the best keyboard out there, but it is pretty good. I would say it's right in the medium range as it relates to most of the models out there. So let's talk about audio on this. This does feature DTS, immersive gaming sound, but the speakers themselves are laptop speakers. There's not much to write home about, but take a listen and let me know what you think.
Do you
So in terms of audio, I do find that the highs are too bright, the mids are lacking, and there's of course very little to no lows. And as a result, I feel like you're just gonna go with the headphones, get something that's a little bit more immersive as it relates to audio. All right, so how is the webcam? Well, the webcam is fairly decent actually. It is still only a 720p camera. However, it does come through pretty sharp. The microphone pickup is okay. I do find that it's a bit quiet. However, you could probably adjust that through software settings to give you a little bit more mic boost. The noise cancellation is mediocre, but I think this is very passable and slightly ahead of most other laptops in its category. I'd say this is a win. All right, so the chassis itself, so while it is all aluminum, I actually have found that it is picking up a bit of scratches. Out of, probably a couple dozen laptops that I have tested thus far, I actually haven't had an issue with the lid getting scratches. But this one actually was the first. I've actually noticed a couple nicks that have come up over just a week of usage. So just be mindful if you do pick up this laptop that you want to be a little careful. It is a very thin coating on it, and so that paint that it has on it can get scratched fairly easily, I found. So this is the Predator Sense app. This is really all the controls for the laptop itself. So right when you start it up, hotkey on the keyboard, that will get you into the main page. It shows you your CPU, GPU, and system temperature. Moving into lighting, you can see this is where you can set the different RGB key settings. So lots of different options to pick from to really make this laptop do what you want it to do. Now in terms of overclocking, this is where you can set the overclock for the GPU. It does have a small improvement in frames per second overall, but you can choose between normal, fast, and extreme. Of course, this does mean more heat, which can mean more noise. Now, when you do click the turbo button, that actually will automatically put the GPU up into extreme mode. So this is a nice, quick, and easy way to get the most performance out of the laptop very quickly. Of course, you get the noise levels to go along with it. Now, in terms of fan control, the auto setting is the default setting. The nice thing about auto is it actually does quite a good job in keeping everything cool with the noise levels down. If you want a little bit more cooling capacity, it has a mode called Cool Boost. That will go slightly higher. And of course, the max settings is your turbo mode. That goes full speed on the fans to really maximize the cooling output on the laptop, making sure that you have everything as cool as possible. Monitoring, this is where you can get a graph overlay of how well the CPU and GPU is doing over time. GameSync's a unique feature that allows you to adjust the per game settings. So lighting control, your overclock, your fan speeds, all of those types of things per game. So that's quite a nice feature for this tool. All right, and now moving up into the advanced settings, this is where you can gain access to your LCD overdrive. This makes sure the panel can actually drive at that 3 milliseconds as advertised. So definitely want to go in here and adjust your LCD to 3 milliseconds. All right, so in terms of noise levels, at idle, when this thing's not plugged in, the fans can spool all the way down to near inaudible levels. You can actually hear that the fan noises are still moving, but there is no whirring sound at all. However, I do notice that there is a bit of coil whine. It is very, very slight when you're listening for it, but overall, in most cases, I don't even notice it. Now, when we do plug it in, you do gain access to, of course, overclocking, able to put that way up into turbo mode. That certainly will elevate the noise levels, getting all the way up to near 60 decibels. So it can certainly move the air when needed. Now that being said, for the most part, you don't need to use turbo. Turbo between the auto setting only shows a marginal improvement of about 1 to 2% with drastically louder noise levels. But in most gaming, it sits at around 50 decibels. This is a really great sound level because I find that you don't actually need to have headphones on in order to have a great gaming experience. So this is really good. You can definitely tell that those two GPU fans that are cooling components on this unit is really working quite well. So in terms of undervolting, this model specifically was able to get about a negative 105 millivolt, which is fairly respectable for the 10750H processor. All right, so let's get to the benchmarks. Let's take a look at what this laptop is capable of. So first up, we have PC Mark 10. The Triton 500 came in at 5528. Heading over to Cinebench R20. With turbo mode, no undervolt, this posted a score of 2853. Now you can see when you do get the undervolt in there, it goes all the way up to 3252. And this is really right in the top marks for the 10750H processor. So great to see from that perspective. Now let's take a look at the temps. As you can see, between turbo and turbo with undervolt, the undervolt gives you better thermals by about 4 degrees. That 4 degrees makes a big difference in the Cinebench score just simply because it doesn't have to throttle as quickly until it hits its peak temperature of 90 degrees Celsius. Let's head over to superposition. 4K optimized 6785 and 1080p extreme 5213. Heading over to 3D Mark. So on Port Royal 3109, Time Spy 8250, and Firestrike Extreme 9989. Heading over to Modern Warfare. So settings, max settings, ray tracing on, tessellation to near, posted a score of 76 frames per second. Heading over to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The Acer Predator 500, this came in with the auto undervolted extreme overclock on the graphics, 100 frames per second. And then the only difference moving that now to turbo came in at 102 frames per second. Now taking a look at the temperatures and the frames, so you can see that under the extreme overclock with auto, just the auto fans, sitting around that 50 decibels. When you go up to turbo mode, that's 56 decibels. That's a big increase in sound and noise levels. But you can see it's very small as it relates to the overall frames per second. Now comparing that to the Triton 300, you can see that the sound levels sitting at that 56 degrees for both. But look at, this is the same GPU, guys. Same GPU, 2070 Super, 95 watts, but look at the score on the frames per second. That's all the way down at 86 and 85 frames per second. So the 500 really shines here. Heading over to Anno 1800, this came in at 102 frames per second in the benchmark. So looking at Metro Exodus, on the extreme setting, 32.89 frames per second, and Ultra, 65.09 frames per second. Heading over to Death Stranding. So this was able to maintain 96 frames per second on average. And then looking at Forza Horizon 4, this came in at 130 frames per second. Microsoft Flight Simulator, in the auto position for the fans, 39 frames per second. And then when it's on turbo mode, it only saw an increase of 2 frames up to 41 frames per second. Again, really making a compelling case to keep everything on the auto setting. So looking at Red Dead Redemption 2, Ultra settings came in at 59.27 frames per second. Now moving into Fortnite, Epic settings. So without DLSS set, 122 frames per second. And this is where you can see DLSS really shine. Set to quality, came in at 145 frames per second. Apex Legends posted 157 frames per second. And then just moving over, a couple new titles I wanted to add to the benchmarks. This one, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, came in at around that 61 frames per second. Far Cry 5 at 99 frames per second. Horizon Zero Dawn at 68 frames per second. And Watch Dogs Legion at 52 frames per second. All right, so that wraps up the benchmarks. You know, overall, I was really impressed by how well this unit did. I ultimately didn't expect very much more from just having an extra fan, but Acer really did a great job of differentiating this model from its smaller brother, the 300 series. I would have to say, if you're gonna choose between these two models, definitely go with the 500. It certainly makes a great case, and overall the performance is that much better by a long shot. So while gaming, you know, temperature on the deck, only you're seeing around that 40 degrees, just kind of warm spot right in the middle there as expected, but most of the other components that you're touching, your palm rest, things like that, are well under 30 degrees. So it does a really decent job of keeping the components cool. All right, so in terms of battery life on this unit, so this does feature an 86 watt hour battery. When it's unplugged from the wall, you get around that 4-hour battery life. I find that that's better than average on most gaming laptops out there. I still want more. I think that 6-hour mark would be great. Of course, that's not while gaming. While gaming, that's going to dramatically reduce down to around that 90-minute mark. All right, so final thoughts on the Predator Triton 500. Well, overall, I'm pretty impressed by this unit. The fact that I actually had pretty low expectations coming from the 300 and how poorly that one did on the thermals as well as overall frames per second. This did a really good job of keeping things quiet, fairly cool, and noise levels well under control. So the question is what's wrong with this unit? The things that I don't like on it, well, number one, I find that the lid is already picking up some scratches. It's fingerprint prone as well. So in terms of durability, I am worried that this might get a little ratty pretty quickly over some time. I've only had it for a week and it's already showing some signs of wear and tear. So truthfully, there's not much I don't like about this unit. I think Acer has done a really great job of putting together a great package in this 500 series. So I would give this an IMO score of 8 out of 10. This is a solid laptop and one that you should seriously consider. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. That wraps up the review on the Triton 500. Of course, I'll put a link to this laptop in the description down below. And if you are considering this, what others are you considering? What are the features that you like or dislike about this one? Post a comment down below. Of course, as always, please like and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, bye for now.